Wow, what a great off-air conversation I had with Anne Davey Koomans. She's the writer for this book called Beyond Barriers. And I was just blown away by the significance of her husband and what he's done that has actually changed all of our lives. Wait till you hear that story. And all the places that she's been, it made me want to get back on the road and, first of all, go spend time in Alaska. Already I'm lobbying the hubs for a trip to Alaska after I found out that she spent 13 weeks in Alaska. Anne, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Really enjoyed our discussion the other day.
I did too. So tell everybody what you told me. What made you decide to write this book, Beyond Barriers?
Well, my husband, David Davey, had done so much that we decided we really ought to put it down because it was kind of a legacy for our children and grandchildren. So we really wrote it for them. And then when people heard that we had, they said, hey, we want to buy it. And then we said, it's not a book yet. And so they asked us to do it. And that's what happened.
Well, one of the things about your husband is that he pushed hard for the Disabilities Act to get that through Congress. Tell us his story and why that was so important to him.
Well, Dave had polio when he was 12, and he was in the hospital for a year. He was in an iron lung for several months and then rehab. And when he was lying there, he knew he was never going to be able to walk again. And all the things that went through his mind went through everybody's mind probably. But when he got out, he went to college, and his roommate happened to be had polio as well. So the two of them talked about it, and it just seemed like to them that God was telling them, you two can do something about this. And that they got started, and his friend said, Dick said, I think I should take care of the transportation side of it, and so he did. He went on to build a wonderful show. But Dave went ahead then, wrote rehab programs. Then he worked with city, national people to get all of the different things in rehab available for people with disabilities. He had a wonderful faith, and when he talked with different ones, he would go on to the next person, and then finally he got to Senator Bob Dole. And when Bob had him, he was working on the National Barrier-Free Architectural and Transportation Bill with Senator Dole to help develop standards for the Americans with Disabilities Act, which passed in 1990. Dave was the actual liaison with all of the Goodwills and most of the rehab facilities here in Michigan to get that through Congress.
Wow, and what an impact on so many people's lives, and that's what I was alluding to when we first jumped on, and what a legacy for those grandchildren, your family, etc. And he was actually in the Goodwill Hall of Fame, and because of what he did, you really went all over the world. How many countries have you been to, and how many states have you been to?
I've been to, I believe, 58 states. I've been to all the, not states, but I've been to 49 states and everything except North Dakota. And I've been in about 50 countries and a lot of islands. Dave liked to sail, so I know he liked going through the Panama Canal. Before we got married, I said to him, what three things would you like to do, Dave, besides working on getting everything through Congress? But he said, I'd like to go to Hawaii, Alaska, and through the Panama Canal. And when we went through the Panama Canal, we had some grape juice, and we toasted it, and we said, here, you've seen it all. So,
boy, and you have seen it all. And you talk about so much in the book. Again, it's called Beyond Barriers, and Anne Davey Koomans, we're speaking with the author of the book. And it's about it's inspirational, and it's about your life and the things that you got to do, etc. And we talked about the push to make a difference in others' lives. And Alaska, you went to Alaska for, this is crazy, 13 weeks. What was it like spending that much time in Alaska?
It was wonderful. And what was really great with that state was probably the first one that ever became totally barrier-free. And we took helicopter rides. We went on cruises. We did everything. It was spectacular. And the wonderful thing is, everywhere we went, we met people who had different handicaps. Dave was able to tell them where to go, what to do. When we got back, Dave made lots of phone calls for a lot of people. We had a lot of people up there that realized that we were Christians. I'm a Christian storyteller, and I got to do the Witness of the Innkeeper, and I think about 12 churches up there. But it was just spectacular because Dave is always looking for ways that we could help other people, and we had such an opportunity up there. But when we came back, Dave still had 1 year at Goodwill before he retired, and in 1 year he had so many opportunities to start new programs, to get everything ready so that when he retired, the new person was able to take over and to continue the program. And we had programs with the high school, programs with the college, programs with every vocational rehabilitation, blind services, and there were just it just seemed like every time we turned around there was an opportunity. He did an awful lot of talking, speaking. He was on different committees. He's probably the only Goodwill exec that has served. He served 2 terms with the Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities. He was vice chair in one of his terms. He got to help rewrite their bylaws, and when the book is really hoping that people will read it, be motivated by the different people that we were able to help, and to understand that life is good, and so whatever whatever happens to you, there is another answer. And Goodwill, all of the other rehabilitation facilities now are trying to help everybody that has any disability. And that's what we're really hoping, that you read the book and you say, wow, that man had a lot of fun. He had a terrific sense of humor. He enjoyed life. He really made a difference in the world. We were really blessed because my niece had her own television show in Europe at the time, and so when we would tell her what Dave was doing, she would tell it in Europe, and Dave got calls from Europe all the time. Could we come over? And we had people here from different countries who came over to learn what Dave had done and what they could go back to Europe and do.
Wow. And you said it. There's something about having a great life, but something about giving, and what you actually get back. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that. And you got back as much as you put out, right?
Oh, you get back more. It's just,
yeah.
I mean, when you look at and you see people, like even now, all these years later, 20-some years later, people come up to me at the grocery store and say, aren't you David Davies' wife? And I say yes, and they ask about him. But they tell me the story about when we came into Goodwill. I didn't want to waste my time at a place like that. I wanted to do something. Then Dave came up to me and talked to me, and by the time I left Goodwill, I was like, I had a wonderful job, and this one woman was just telling me she just retired from, I think it was 30 years with an attorney here in town. Before that time, she had I think, 2 illegitimate children when she was 17 years old when she came into the program, and lifted herself up through her knowledge and her training and the fact that she knew that she was worthwhile. She had talent. She had abilities, and she still has the 2 children, but she is happily married, and she is just retiring from an attorney's office and had a terrific job. But I don't know how many people have come up to us and told us about what their life, how it turned around, and how they now are doing volunteer work. Did do a lot of volunteer work for the Gospel Mission, and I met people down there that were volunteering because they had been helped either there or at Goodwill, and their whole life changes because when you want to help people, it's just such a blessing to you. Like you say, it comes around, and it really, when it comes around, you get double the blessing.
Yep, I agree. Yeah. Wow, it's just again, the name couldn't be better, Beyond Barriers. This goes beyond leaving a legacy for grandchildren and people that knew Dave, and what an exciting life, and the adventures are really, really thrilling, and the things that happened and the difference that you made. Anne, thanks so much for joining us on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kate, for having me. I appreciate it.
And we thank everybody for listening to this version of the show as well. Stay safe, and remember, we're all in this together, everyone.